The light of the risen Christ is with us, the light of the world. Welcome everyone to this online Easter Sunday service from Bentleigh Uniting Church in Melbourne. We gather this morning as a scattered community, yet together in spirit, to celebrate the springing forth from death. Rise up and live. Christ is risen. Christ is risen, alive in overflowing grace and love. This prayer. God of all life, we open now to the power of resurrection, to the loving presence flowing through the cosmos and through us, rolling away stones from the mouths of tombs, rising up out of death, faithful, life-giving servant. We open to the healing power of our Easter God, hidden wholeness. And we gather to proclaim that from the tomb of violence, crucifixion and death, Jesus the Christ sheds his grave clothes like a butterfly sheds a cocoon. He emerges our winged hope, an embodiment of a new vision for humanity. Easter God, we stand in great gratitude for this gift, an invitation for us all to spread our wings of love and of hope. Amen. This morning we will read the Gospel storyteller John's account of the resurrection. Now, a significant detail that John includes is that Mary Magdalene came to the empty tomb while it was dark. And it is there, as she is weeping, that the risen Jesus appears to her. I think that this detail speaks poignantly to us as we look to hope amidst the grief and uncertainty of our pandemic-gripped world. The resurrection happened in the night and in the shadows, in the presence of mystery. Filled with uncertainty and hope, life still begins again. Jan Richardson points to the message of hope of a new beginning that is born unexpectedly from emptiness in this blessing that she entitles Seen for Easter Day. I'd like to share it with you now. Seen for Easter Day. You had not imagined that something so empty could fill you to overflowing. And now you carry the knowledge like an awful treasure, or like a child that curls itself within your heart. How the emptiness will bear forth a new world you cannot fathom, but on whose edge you do stand. So why do you linger? You have seen, and so you are already blessed. You have been seen, and so you are the blessing. There is no other word you need. There is simply to go and tell. There is simply to begin. Seen for Easter Day. And that brings us to our prayers this morning of gratitude, lament, and renewal. This prayer. Easter God, we awaken to you. We lift our hearts in grateful celebration of all that you have entrusted to us, for the earth that feeds us and the air that fills us, for the sun that gives us life, and the water that overflows our cups. Spirit of love, with us always, you bind us in love to yourself and to those around us. We lament the times we have hurt others through our carelessness or destructiveness of one form or another. Help us to choose ways of compassion and reconciliation, of love and understanding. We know that you pour on us your gifts of healing and forgiveness, of encouragement and renewal. Touch us again, that we will know that we are accepted, that we are affirmed and someone of worth, and that we are generously blessed. Great giver of life, you call us into fullness of being. We feel your tug to realise a resurrection. Bust open the cold tomb of apathy and indifference to others in need. Massage our hardened hearts into the supple softness of compassion. Grant us the mind of Christ and the courage of spirit to become the people we were created to be. Good Spirit of God, on this Easter morning, help us to say yes to life-giving, yes to hope, yes to a new beginning, yes to the good presence that gives us courage for whatever is ahead of us. This is our prayer. Amen. We come to our scriptures for this Easter morning. This morning's psalm has been recited and sung by many generations of people. It calls people of all nations to be joyful together, to sing their praise to God, and to know God's gift of love transforms the world in every age, in every generation. I read to you Psalm 100. Acclaim the Eternal One with joy, all the earth. Serve the Eternal One with gladness. Enter into God's presence with a joyful song. Know that the Eternal One is God. The Eternal One made us, and we belong to the Creator. We are God's people and the sheep of God's pasture. Enter God's gates with thanksgiving and the courts with praise. Give thanks to God. Bless God's name. For the Eternal One is good. God's steadfast love endures forever, and God's faithfulness to all generations. Psalm 100. This morning's reading from the First Testament prophet Isaiah provides a vision of a great feast on God's mountain, with the promise that God will bring an end to mourning and deliver liberation to all people. I read to you from Isaiah chapter 25, verses 6 to 9. On this mountain, God omnipotent will prepare for all peoples a banquet of rich food, a banquet of fine wines, food rich and succulent, and fine aged wines. On this mountain, God will remove the mourning covering all peoples, the shroud covering all nations, destroying all death forever. God will wipe away the tears from every cheek and will take away the shame of God's people on earth, wherever they live. God has spoken. On that day it will be said, "This is our God, this the one for whose liberation we waited. God is the one in whom we had hoped. We rejoice exultantly in our deliverance, for the hand of God rests on this mountain." Isaiah 25. We come to our gospel reading for this Easter morning. Without Easter, we wouldn't know about Jesus. If his story had ended with his crucifixion, he most likely would have been forgotten. Another Jew crucified by the Roman Empire in a so often brutal century where thousands of such crucifixions took place. Maybe Jesus might have got a passing mention in the historian Josephus, or maybe in some Jewish rabbinic sources. But probably that's about all. So Easter is central to our knowing about the life of Jesus. When we think about the Easter stories, it is important to consider what kind of stories they are. What kind of language are they told in? How is that language being used? Are the stories intended as historical reports, so be understood as history remembered? Or do they use the language of parable and metaphor to express truths that are much more than factual? Or a combination of both, remembered history and metaphor? You may have noticed that there are significant differences in the Easter stories told by each of the 4 gospel storytellers in our Bible. They vary in length, in content, location, and time frames. Yet, many Christians are not at all troubled by this and have come to a view that they need not insist that every detail of each story is factually accurate. So they're not troubled about the discrepant accounts of the number of the angels at the tomb, or about how to combine or reconcile the stories about how his followers experienced the risen Jesus in and around Jerusalem with the story that they returned to Galilee, where they first experienced the risen Jesus. As many scholars point out, focusing on the factuality of the stories often misses their more than factual meanings. Fixating on whether every detail is historically factual can distract us from thinking more deeply about what they mean, the importance of the Easter stories. The importance lies in their meanings. And it seems to me that whether we view the stories as historically factual or as metaphor or parable, when it comes to understanding their meaning for us, they are indeed truth-filled stories. I'll now read to you from the Gospel storyteller John's account, which tells of the risen Jesus first appearing to Mary Magdalene. John chapter 20, verses 1 to 18. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. These are words of faith. Thanks be to God. I now offer this reflection. The tale is told of how a Westerner, excited to be on a safari for the first time, force-marched his native guides through the jungle on a wild search for game, any game at all. Now the party made good speed for the first 2 days, but on the third morning, when it was time to start, the hunter found all the guides sitting on their haunches, looking very solemn and making no preparations to leave. "What are they doing?" the man asked. "Why aren't we moving on?" "They are waiting," the chief guide explained. "They cannot move farther until their souls catch up with their bodies." I was reminded of this story as I reflected on how the social distancing and staying at home requirements necessitated by the coronavirus pandemic mean that many of us have had to stop going to workplaces, to stop our various social and sporting activities, even to stop from gathering with our loved ones, with our wider families and friends on this Easter day. Many of us may be feeling bereft this day in the isolation of our homes on a day of celebration. The story of the safari hunter and the native guides speaks to us about the importance of taking time to stop, to release our mental, spiritual and physical loads, to take time to reflect, to meditate, to pray, to simply be, so that we can connect with the presence of the good spirit within and beyond ourselves, re-energise from within, so that we might be fully present, fully alive to embrace the gift of life. Yet, mindful of the grief and suffering in our pandemic-gripped world around us, we might be inclined to feel that there is more cause today for sorrow than celebrating the gift of life. And we might wonder what gift today could hold for us. Mary Oliver's poem, The Uses of Sorrow, seems to me to point us to look for the gifts that this day might offer, even amidst the terrible suffering in our world. Mary Oliver writes, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." This morning, we pause to let our souls catch up with our bodies. We come to connect with God's good spirit and reflect on the meaning of the Easter story for us, here and now. We stop still, painfully aware of our world's box full of the darkness of coronavirus disease. While this pain is not in itself something good, Perhaps the opportunities it offers for us to stop and reflect and to better live out our faith can be good. It seems to me that the solitude and slowing down of our usual busyness can enable us to go deeper within, to listen and look within to see where Spirit may be encouraging us to pay attention, to make a change of heart, to seek a new direction, to take action, individually and collectively. Perhaps a gift of these troubled times is the fuller realisation of our interconnectedness, however individualistic our culture has grown. Coronavirus impacts all people, regardless of culture, income or location or any other factor. We are interconnected not only by our shared vulnerability to suffering disease, but also by how we respond to this box of darkness. In John's Gospel, we hear how Mary Magdalene responds to the darkness of grief and sorrow, frustration and uncertainty. We're told that Mary goes to Jesus' tomb while it is still dark. Mary sees that the stone has been removed and then runs to Simon Peter and the other disciple and tells them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb and we do not know where they have laid him." Mary's question seems to me to voice the question of the whole community of disciples. Where is Jesus to be found now? It's a question I suspect many in our community may be asking right now. Where is Jesus to be found now? Amidst the death and destruction of the pandemic, we may well be asking this question. In the Gospel story, the question is answered in two parts. Simon Peter and the other disciple run to the tomb and see that Jesus' body is not there. All they see are the linen wrappings and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, rolled up in a place by itself. The veil of Jesus' flesh is put aside. This image recalls Moses, who took off the veil from his face whenever he went up the mountain to meet God. So when the other disciple with Peter sees this, he comes to belief. At this point, not belief in the resurrection, but belief that Jesus had gone to God. And so the pair return to their homes. But despite her misunderstanding of what had occurred, Mary does not head for home. She remains outside the tomb, weeping. Behind her tears of frustration and grief are love and determination. And as she stops and stays with her feelings of sorrow and confusion, of love and determination, the second part of the answer to her question emerges. As she looks inside, Mary sees two angels sitting where Jesus' body had been. They ask her, "Why are you weeping?" And she tells them they have taken away her Lord, and she's determined to know where they have laid him. Mary then turns to see Jesus standing there, but she doesn't know it's Jesus. Thinking him to be the gardener, Mary persists with her quest. "Tell me where you have laid him." When he calls her name, Mary recognises Jesus and responds, "Rabboni, my teacher." She receives his instruction not to cling to the way she knew him previously, as he has ascended to the Father. The message is clear. The Spirit of God she had known in Jesus is now to be found in the sisters and brothers, the gathered community of followers. The risen Jesus commissions Mary to go to them and tell them, which she does. It seems to me that John's account of Mary's response to Jesus' resurrection speaks powerfully to our context today. We, as a community, weep. And we are bewildered by the loss and destruction around us. Yet, amidst our sorrow, our fears and uncertainties, we can also love with determination. We can be signs of the gift of new life. We can live out our resurrection faith by caring for one another. Indeed, we are seeing gifts of love with determination as people stay home to protect one another's health, as sewers collect fabric to make protective clothing for our health workers, as chefs and community volunteers prepare and deliver meals to the vulnerable, as neighbours run grocery errands for the elderly, as performing artists offer their talents to provide online musical inspiration. Our Easter faith calls us to look determinedly to the one in whom we know is found in the everlasting, abundant gift of love. We know that in that one we can find that everlasting gift of love. And in this faith we can find renewed strength, a good spirit presence, sustaining us through darkness into light. The gift of life that we can indeed celebrate in hope and joy this Easter day. We come to our prayers for others and ourselves. God of love and liberation, you call us to love you with our whole being and to love our neighbours as ourselves. At this time of social distancing and isolation, of upheaval and uncertainty, of sorrow and distress, experienced by nations and people right across our world, may your love hold us together. For those who feel discouraged, we ask that they know your empowering strength, calling them forward. For those who are depressed, we ask you to shower upon them the light of hope. For those living with pain, illness, or injury, we ask that you bathe them in the river of your healing. There are those who are close to our hearts this day, those we may not be able to see in person, but will be together in spirit with all of them. Let's pause to bring them to mind and uphold them to your care. Let our prayer and strong hope go out to all of these people we bring to mind who are close to our hearts this day. Easter God, light shining through all creation, may you shine through our lives, helping us to share the light of your liberating love with those both near and far. In the freedom of your renewing, life-giving spirit, we pray. Amen. And this blessing for Easter Sunday. May the wonder of Easter break forth anew in all of us, in those we love and in all the earth, on this day and in the days to come. In the love of the Spirit of Christ, go forth in peace.